Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind Body broadcast with Austin and Marty. And today we are going to cover IIYFM, or if it fits your macros, and just some general macro discussion, misconceptions, talk about things that you should do and things that you probably shouldn't do, where this method came from and kind of how it was bastardized, if you will.
That's exactly it, how it was bastardized.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's become. Although I will say that there still are extremists and more conservative sides. I think it's gotten a little bit better at meeting in the middle over the last few years, but I mean, there's still a lot of misconceptions out there.
Yeah, it was kind of like it was one of those diets, we'll say, I don't even know if we should call it a diet style, but that might be just what it is, that kind of came up out of, well, seemingly nowhere, kind of like the friggin' tug toner overnight or whatever the hell that was, the shake weight. and before you know it, everyone was saying IIFYM, or now you hear more of it called macro dieting, or my preferred term of it, if you're going to use it, and we'll say the correct way, is flexible dieting. So just to give everyone out there, in case, because I've had multiple requests on how, with everything about this, they're like, how do you macro diet? What is the right style of macro dieting? I've been told this is what I'm supposed to do. I've been told that my fats don't count. I've been told my carbs should be now. I've been told that I shouldn't be able to have any branch change. I've been told everything, and where it's all coming from is got to be magical out there. So to give you a little bit of a history, back in around, let's go with 2004-ish. I know there's going to be some people out there that are going to correct me on that, but I'm going to go with it anyway. It was on the bodybuilding.com forums, and basically people started realizing that that protein had 4 calories per gram, that a carbohydrate had 4 calories per gram, and how fat had 9 calories per gram. And some people were trying to tell everyone else that were on these forums, these guys that were of, we'll say, heavy hitting status. They had a lot of reps at the time. Reps were something that people could bump you up with reps, saying, oh, this guy's a knowledgeable guy, so that you should listen to this guy or this girl on bodybuilding.com. So these people started saying, how much should I eat, or what should I do if it fits your macros? Yeah, well, can I have cake if it fits your macros? Well, what about pizza if it fits your macros? And then people got got too tired of saying if it fits your macros. So then all of a sudden we had the acronym IIFYM, and so. If that's all you knew about macros, and that sometimes people will still say that that's what it is, eat whatever you want as long as it fits within your macros. And that's just when, even now, 10 years into hearing about this, practicing this, I still have to roll my eyes right and kind of do my best not to step in and say it's like an asterisk. There's a heck of a lot more that goes into this than that. So then guys such as Alan Aragon, Lyle McDonald, Eric Helms, just name some of the actual scientists and researchers that were using this style of dieting, they kind of came in and wrote their own books. Like Lyle McDonald's books are some, I'll call it essential reading for almost everyone for everyone that wants to jump into the nutrition world. Eric Helms has his books out there, the Strength and Nutrition Pyramids, and then also Alan Aragon had his one called Girth Control. And these were kind of the god babies of the macro dieting fiasco that started happening. So, and it's kind of evolved from there, which is great because there was no real guidelines other than if you have, let's say, we'll make it real simple, 200 grams of protein a day, 100 grams of carbs a day, and 50 grams of fats a day. It doesn't matter the food source as long as you hit those macros per day. So that was kind of the start of it, and people took off and went crazy with this. They're like, so I can eat all, and so from so many standpoints, that was very liberating for a lot of people. So we're going to talk about that too, about how it was liberating on the mind, and then, believe it or not, very confining on the mind, on the the other hand will say. So to start out with that, the usually protein, of course, we have more limited different choices as opposed to the other foods. But then people started getting a little bit too haywire with the protein, in the sense of too that now a lot of protein bars were being consumed and everything else. And so then carbs, of course, people were picking the famous ones out there were muffins, they were cinnamon buns, they were bagels, of course, Pop Tarts, and people were fitting them into their diet or making their diet completely full of these items. And just as long as their totals all added up when they flipped around the back of the box, that was allowed to be their diet. So that's kind of the history of where the macronutrient IIFYM flexible dieting whole, abomination started, was there.
Yep. So there's your background, guys, as far as where it started, when it started, and then how it was bastardized. But, from there, I think that once people started realizing that there were some side effects to that, at least the knowledgeable people, like the people that understood the concept of, the macros match, the calories match, the laws of thermodynamics, obviously calories in, calories out. They realized that it worked, but the people that were actually knowledgeable and started applying it to more people, at least, someone like myself personally, I noticed, okay, so this doesn't, food A doesn't necessarily have the same cosmetic effect as food B. They lost fat, but maybe there's something else to it. And then you start looking at things like, inflammation and digestive issues, food allergies, food sensitivity. So all that stuff starts to come into play. And that's kind of where you have to find a balance of, okay, so how liberal of an approach do I want to take with this? Because I think a lot of people, they would argue, okay, so you can pretty much follow this to any extent that you want, as long as you get your micronutrients in also. So your micronutrients, your vitamins, your minerals, and some people say, just take a multivitamin, right? Well, I think that the micronutrient thing is true to an extent. Obviously, if you're never eating vegetables, you don't eat any kind of high micronutrient dense foods, there's probably things that you're missing out on. But I don't think that it's necessarily that simple that you can just take a multivitamin and eat processed food all day. Because, don't get me wrong, and you probably have too, I've experimented with things. I wanted to see what would happen if I ate, instead of following like an 80-20 rule with 80% quote unquote clean or unprocessed foods and then 20% dirty, I would flip it and see what would happen. And I just didn't perform well. I didn't feel good. I was sluggish, brain fogged, all those things, kind of gut inflammation. Some of the things that we talked about in the digestive episode. I don't know what your experience is with that, but just in my eyes, like even if it produces the same body composition, that's okay. But if something is hindering my performance in the gym, then obviously indirectly that's going to help. That's going to make it more difficult for me to lose body fat, gain muscle, obviously the things that we want to do.
I pretty much experienced the exact same thing. I did especially around here where I was from, still am from, Red Deer, Alberta. Canada, for y'all don't know where Alberta is. Was one of the very first people that kind of saw this concept and was being mind blown by this. Like, of course, I said, this can't be happening. People can't be, and it is to a certain degree. Like I'm not gonna get into. We don't have enough time to get into a carb is a carb is a carb, because of course micronutrients, like you said, the digestion, the assisting of digestion, bacteria, everything else. But to some degree, all the carbs do somehow manage to try to get to sugar now, because then I know people that were having, will say, just the Pop Tarts that would take digestive enzymes to speed that along, and it's like, wow, it's kind of like putting the tape over the warning check engine light and saying, "Oh, we'll worry about the extra sugar and the chronically high blood sugar later." And then, because the arguments raged on back and forth between this for quite some time. And so then I kind of made up my own version of it. I had an ebook that was called The Mega Lifestyle that I'd send to clients. And I said, if you want to try this kind of style of dieting, and here it is. So there, of course, it's been around forever. MyFitnessPal, I would say MyFitnessPal, the app, which helps you be able to log in food, to use that to see, okay, how many macros do I have left? How many macros do I not have left? Where's my fiber at? And of course, I know, and this is not me saying I guess, I know that a lot of people don't flip at the micronutrient tab to take a look to see if they're hitting everything there. So that's one of the bigger problems that I notice, is that people do have a propensity to get a bit more sick from this style of dieting. If they don't watch it, they're missing out on a lot of those essential things. But yeah, like my gut started to just not feel good, even eating good things, right? Just from the high turnover of sugar in my stomach per se. Like I tried just to go the full bro, we'll call it the full bro macro, which is, I'm just making up a definition for myself, which would be way outside of that 80-20 that you're talking about, Austin, in terms of 80 healthy and 20 whatever to kind of sneak it in. But in seeing also as a side note, in seeing a presentation by Alan Aragon on this, they more go towards the 10% as opposed to like a 90-10, which is awesome, because that's, especially if you're trying to do a bodybuilding show, I don't even know like what the 10% we could even do. It should something. We're just one of those weirdos that at some certain point, I bet you want 100% from your clients too. I guess it's a show. You want to look your best. Let's hit 100% of the correct foods, right? But so yeah, I didn't. My sleep was affected greatly. I don't know if it was just from stomach cramps or just from that I wasn't getting the right night nutrients again. But my energy, and telling you, in the gym just sucked. That's the thing that sucked the most. It was just it just wasn't there for me in my lifts. So, and I also like to talk then about the side effects on that is the well-being. You know what I mean? It's just, you wouldn't be wandering around your day quite feeling the same if you're running off of foods that were quote unquote meant for you. And I've talked to many people about this. I've been in many Facebook groups, even chatting to people in the gym when it finally started becoming a bigger thing here. And there's some zealots on either way that will firmly tell you that I can get shredded on candy X or bad food Y. And I'm like, I bet you can. And I know you can. It's the matter of the health. Is it optimal? And are there better ways? And then, of course, Facebook came around, Instagram came around with the coaches, and you'd see the coaches having nothing but crap and looking amazing. So that's you know where I'm going with this. So yeah, you go, take it away.
Well, that's kind of. That it's partially true and partially not true, because about as far as like the whole social media thing goes, people aren't posting, like, let's say it's a coach, okay, and they get, what happens on Instagram, the freaking picture of junk food gets 10 times the likes as a picture of a clean meal, and that's just how, it's the sensationalism or whatever you want to call it of, oh, they're eating junk food. And then sometimes people think, oh, that's all they're eating. Well, obviously that's not true. We know that, but people know how to market. So that's all they post. And you know what I mean? So that's a whole different story though. I mean, that's just like all of the girls that post their asses, 25 times a day. So, I mean, there's different tiers to that whole thing. But as far as like, some other things that I noticed, just in the digestive side of things, is that, like we talked about in that episode, and I think especially in the last couple of years, has been coming around more and more, is just how important the gut is and the gut microbiome. So eating those things it's like, well, I look the same, but why do I feel different? Well, that's because maybe there's more inflammation. Maybe it's interrupting the lining in your gut, all the neurons that are in your gut. It's throwing off And I mean, now we know, we talked about some crazy stuff like stool samples of the people with good probiotic bacteria. I mean, it's all kinds of crazy stuff. So, we know that, hey, if we're interrupting any of those things, then obviously we're not going to be feeling as good as we should. And it's going to affect us. It's going to affect us long term. You mentioned people getting sick. I definitely noticed that one because while it seems like, okay, we're covering our micronutrients, maybe we're taking a multivitamin or whatever, like I said, but why is this person still getting sick? Well, that's probably because you're interrupting the gut, like there's inflammation. The gut bacteria is off. Maybe there's a little bit of SIBO. Maybe you're actually experiencing some leaky gut or something, worse like that. And I actually know several people personally, and it's like a weird mental thing that the biggest issue I see is they get into not necessarily the IIFYM, like as much junk food, but especially people that do it for volume eating.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like there's like, okay. And I've done it before. And I mean, there are situations where I will do it, but it's not a chronic thing, where people figure out, okay, what kind of stuff can I use and put in my diet to give me the most possible volume, eat the most possible food and still meet my macronutrients. And that's problematic, obviously, because it's not going to digest properly. It's going to cause a ton of inflammation. You're going to pull a lot of water into the gut. There's going to mean meals are going to overlap constantly because you just can't digest things. And it's just a whole host of issues. So that's probably one of the bigger ones that I see is that the volume eating. And then it's like an addiction. It's a weird thing because it does throw off your hunger signaling when you start getting into the hunger hormones. It does interrupt those things. So I ate 3 pounds of food and my body thinks this should register as, this should be like 4,000 calories, right? This is a ton of food. Well, it's not. So you're hungry, but you're bloated, but you feel like shit. But you know what I mean? Like it's, it's just a constant. Yeah. So it's a constant cycle. It just goes over and over again. And it is a weird, like I said, it's a weird addiction thing. Like I remember I was real into the volume eating for a while and I kind of noticed that was starting to happen. Like I don't think I was doing it intentionally, but I started to figure out, like catch myself making my meal spread or meal template based on how can I eat the most in the day. And I'm like, okay, this is getting out of hand. Like this is strange, and obviously I pulled back, but I think there's a lot of people that really get caught in that. And that's pretty unfortunate. I mean, can be a hard thing to break. So that's kind of another issue. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
So on that's wonderful. So let me say this. I actually do enjoy macronutrient dieting, especially if it's done correctly. And we can even call it if it fits your macros. I do enjoy it done if it's done correctly. And correctly, again, you'll find that be debated on still now just as much as if keto is the number one thing for cancer saving and fat loss, but we're not going to go there. But when I mean doing it right, I can kind of give you a little bit of what I have found that works the best. And I have done with myself, the adding, let's say, we'll just keep using Pop Tarts because, hey, that was my thing for years, right? Let's say you had your 5 to 6 ounces of chicken. Let's say you had 2 cups of white rice and you're just, oh man, I cannot just mentally or physically the rice. So then you had a Pop Tart with it. So, and then that kind of translated a couple meals to a little bit more than meals. Maybe now the 80-20 was going out of whack, and that can and it will work. But like you said, it's just it's messing up some of the stuff in the guts in terms of how well your body will process the food. And the funniest thing about that is that if you were to eat, let's say, the 3rd cup of rice, let's say your rice really got along with your body, is that you would get hungrier quicker and be able to eat more food as opposed to if you having we'll call it the dumb Pop Tart. And that's me calling it the dumb Pop Tart. But and that's mind blowing. So once you get the foods that are perfect for your body, the digestive tract is going great. It is like a machine, man, how much food these guys can go through. But it's just the ideas, right? Psychology was one of the prime drivers behind this, and that is what you will see being touted almost the most heavily is that now this is not giving into robbing you from all the foods that you want. You can sometimes somehow have the foods you want, work it into your plan, and be guilt-free. Now, that is one of the best parts about it if it's not abused. That is, it's awesome. I'm so happy that, like, you know, how many girls I train that work in an office setting that cookies were out, let alone, let's talk about it. Christmas just happened a little while ago. Like the amount that they will put out, the brownies, the cookies, the whatever, so that they can have the damn cookie or the half the cookie or whatever, and you know what, and to just cross it out and say, I don't get X fat and X carbs later. That's cool. That works. But to do that every day or to actually promote people to doing that every day, that's when I get a little bit into on the coaching side of things. Again, can it work? Probably. Is it detrimental? Could be. And I like that you said the term cosmetic carbs a little while ago too. I first heard that term quite some time ago. And there's going to be carbs that work with you a heck of a lot better than carbs that work with someone else. So a lot of these processed carbs, like you said, or even it couldn't necessarily just be processed, but just refined, are not necessarily going to give you the best cosmetic look in a sense too. I know for me, oatmeal does not give me a cosmetic look. It gives me a bloated, disgusting look. So I try to stay away from it for the majority of the time. And I also wanted to come back to, you said about the girls posting about eating their crap. Well, here's the other marketing ploy out there. I hope that a lot of people catch on to this one, is that's the one meal or maybe they do it twice a week or whatever, and then the other 85% of them eating their chicken and rice and vegetables or their sweet potato, that's what they're not showing, that's just pulling you into the black hole saying, you can eat like me too if you do this, but let alone do we know how genetic this girl is, little we know how hard this girl diets, little we know how long this girl's been dieting for, let alone how much cardio this girl is doing how much training this girl is doing. So I really wish they would post more saying, oh, by the way, here's my first 5 meals, and then I'm sneaking in 3 squares of a Hershey bar later on. But they don't do that because, again, it's dirty marketing. So that's another thing to kind of really watch out for there, too. And I know you said, too, about taking the multivitamin, but I am not a fan of the bodybuilding or over-the-counter multivitamins just because you might not necessarily need some of the vitamins in this one capsule, even Animal Pack and things like that, or they might not be the right form for your body. I know that a lot of companies will cheap out on the forms of them, so therefore when you have it from food, of course it's going to be in the correct form for your body, and then now you're eating it too, as opposed to having to take this chocolate bar with your vitamin C and your vitamin D. So that's one of the bigger benefits too, that going into the guts, is that now you don't really need to have this multivitamin that might quite not do it. And that's why I still saw people getting sick, or more apt to get sick with we'll call it bro macro dieting approach and still a multivitamin. Yeah. So then we can go into some of the different forms of it, right? Whereas you can call yourself a coach pretty much off of anything nowadays. So I've had now clients that have had coaches in the past where they will get 3 numbers, maybe 4, from their coach, and that is their almost entire nutrition plan, which is their protein, their carbs, their fats, and sometimes if they've done a little bit more homework than just the front page of bodybuilding.com, they'll give you your fiber amount as well. And so apparently that's a meal plan, Austin. So, yeah. And then they would you'd start seeing price slashing. You'd see $50 for a meal plan. And it's like people, oh man, $50 tailored for you. Oh wow. And then they go find some frigging macro calculator on Google, which I literally had this happen to one of my clients, drop off of coaching with me, hired another lady, And she said, I really want to try this macro dieting stuff. She goes, oh, I don't really believe in it. And so then she said, okay, you know what? Me and you will do it together. And so the girl's boyfriend went to Google, typed in macro calculator, typed in his girlfriend, who was the one that hired the girl, her stats and everything. It was a literal printout from Google about the macros and how to do it. And so that was what this client, this ex-client of mine, paid for, was for her to go to Google, and that was her learning about macronutrient dieting. And so that's how so much coaching is done today. We don't have enough time for me to talk about my angst and rage for coaching right now. But yeah, so that's not really it. The last thing I'd like to say too is about how fiber, if you are going to do it, fiber is something that needs to be taken also into consideration whoppingly along with your we'll call them the primary macros. Fiber, depending upon the type, is anywhere between 1.5 to 2 calories per gram. And as we just said, it was 4 calories per gram for both proteins and carbs, and it's 9 calories per gram for fats. So the 1.5 to 2 grams, that's not even that, or half at best of a carbohydrate, which is what they lump fiber underneath, is carbohydrates. So I like to give people, if I ever do give them a macronutrient plan, I like to give them a fiber target, a fiber target, not a fiber tiger, on top of what they need for their macronutrients. Because if you are eating of a bigger volume, you probably are going to need a bigger volume of fiber as well in order to ensure intestinal motility, that you're clumping properly, you're going to the bathroom enough times a day. Because without that, you'll see these people that will have way too many fiberless carbs, especially in the sugary ones, without any kind of fiber, and that becomes quite the detriment to the bloated feeling too, because the food is just sitting there with nothing to shuttle it along.
Yeah, and there's a couple points. Like when you talk, there's always things I want to reiterate and vice versa.
Yeah, right.
So with you mentioned like ratios, like, people talk, well, how much clean food, how much dirty food? You said 90-10. I think you mentioned, cited Alan Aragon.
That's
and
right.
I know
Yeah.
he did. Yeah. So, and he did publish some stuff on this, which was great. And I think a good answer for that is it really comes down to whatever works for you. And I think it's also contextual even for that person, and it's going to change time to time. Like the biggest thing about this is you talked about the Christmas situation. That's a great one. And you can sit there and you can say, okay, this cookie is whatever. Maybe it's a homemade cookie, so the best they can do is probably get on Google and find, estimated nutrition facts. But we're looking at it and they think, oh my gosh, if I eat this though, I'm only going to have this many calories left and this many carbs and this much fat and this much protein when I get home. So is it really worth it? So that's kind of what you run into especially in a contest prep situation. If you're a female eating, 1,000 calories a day, personally, I don't know that I really want to be putting mini Snickers bars in my diet, just because, that would be like 90% of my food for the day. So, that's not, and with guys too, when guys and their calories get low enough, I find that really, in contest prep, I might almost eat less processed food. This is just what I've noticed personally. I might almost eat less processed food than in off season, and not because I'm in off season, but because I'm eating more food in the off season, and some of those processed carbohydrates, for example, will just digest quicker. It's just contextual. Some of my favorite sources right now are, I eat flavored rice cakes, and that's like, and I can eat a whole entire tube. It's like, there's like 14 of them in a tube. It's the 112 carbs, I think, for the whole thing. I can eat that easy, no problem. And if I sit there and eat on, like you mentioned, oatmeal, it is nutritious as far as nutrients go, but yeah, it just doesn't work for everyone. And I would never tell anyone to eat it if it doesn't work for them, just because it's a clean food. So it's really, like I said, it's really just contextual, how you use the, if it fits your macros. I think that's just food selection in general. It's going to be totally different person to person. I really don't think that I really don't give anyone a rule. We just kind of fine tune things as we go, and try to obviously fit in as much nutritious food as we can, and then kind of insert other stuff. But I mean, don't get me wrong. I have people that eat. I mean, I've got a gal right now. She's got a crazy metabolism. You know, she's 120 pounds, relatively lean, and has to eat like 4,000 calories a day.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's nuts. But she's like sitting there eating mixing bowls with meals in them. So for somebody like that has pretty good digestion, because typically somebody with a really fast metabolism tends to have a usually efficient digestion anyhow.
Yes.
Just because they digest quick. Yeah, I'm going to have to put some processed foods in her diet. I'm not going to make the poor girl eat 500 grams of carbs from white potato. I mean, that's going to be like 5 pounds of potato a day.
Mm-hmm.
Or more. So yeah, I mean, it's contextual.
Yeah. I love that you said that too, because that is like the whole point behind it too, because I've seen it go both ways. So someone with the obscene, like 120 pounds, 4,000 calories as a girl, that's the outliers at the very top, right? And they do exist, right, and they are there. It's wonderful, because I kind of have, we'll call it, not my version, or at least a looser version, or a version of if it fits your macros for the off season. Like I'll especially because this is the time where, regain your brain type of thing, be a little bit more relaxed, live a little bit more of your life. And even to then, I'm going to start going into the psychology in terms of the good and the bad behind it now, because this is where I've seen it stomp out a lot of people. Is that the good stuff is that, so yes, you can, save your macros or whatever you'd like for the nighttime. But then now you could turn into this person wandering around with their phone, where everything you pick up, you're looking at the back. And it almost turns into, you become neurotic, you become anxious. And I've seen people go, oh God, I've got 3 fats left. What do I have for 3 fat? Oh, I've got 11 carbs. Oh, 11 carbs, 3 fats. How am I going to make that work? And I've seen a lot of people really go down that rabbit hole, and they're tracking and they're logging and they're trying to figure it out. And then it also seems to breed these people that stop planning their meals in advance, period, or stop doing meal prep and just can kind of wake up and go. Now, can you do that? Sure. But in terms of having any kind of serious goal, or I wouldn't even say serious, just goal in terms of muscle gain or fat loss, you should have some kind of meals prepped at your house, ready to go. To wake up every day and to just wing it and go, okay, so there was 2 egg yolks, so that's about 10 fats, and then to do that and just wing your day, that's kind of setting you up for quite not only the appetite disaster, but it's setting you up for quite a bit of psychological disaster in the end. Because that will slowly, and it doesn't always happen, because I know some people that they literally do love tracking their macros, and it's a good part of their day, and that's awesome. Good on you, and I have those girls that do it, and I will continue to encourage them doing it. But as soon as I start to see them going down the road of, oh, I didn't log that today, or oh, I didn't track that today, I'm like, okay, we need to look into something a little bit more of either a set plan or a set plan with options. Because, it can create some really, I wouldn't necessarily say eating disorders, but it can create some psychological disorders where now they're looking at foods and it's almost to the point where they are nervous about what might happen at the end of the day if they don't have it planned out. So there's that there too. And so I really don't like, especially the deeper we get into prep, doing it at all. And the reason why that is that I'm not calling everyone brain dead in prep, but I am saying you will tend to get more forgetful. And then so adding into your day, trying to calculate out meals, trying to say, okay, I had this much chicken, I had this much this. Get on a setter plan. I don't care if it's options or whatever like that. Just make it brain dead, because one of the famous things I say to a lot of my boys and girls is, why would you look back going and giving yourself another option to potentially screw this up, whereas opposed to you just have a list of healthy foods that are on your quote unquote macros that you just pick from, bang them, and go. And not go, oh, did I eat that food? Did I not log that? Or that's another variable that we just don't friggin' need at that time. So that's kind of exactly what I'll do with my people there. Is I'll say I'm more of an off-season, if it fits your macros guy in a way, but more of a contest prep, not straight up old school or every frigging meal is tilapia, green beans, and or whatever, but definitely more. We'll say towards that 90-10, if not 100%, just because people will feel better. And not only that, but as soon as you say, hey, listen, it's 8 weeks, it's 6 weeks, whatever, that's all you have to do. And then you can go back to your precious Pop Tarts. Can you do that for me and for yourself and for the potential to win versus maybe coming second or third? And they go, yeah, I can do that. And so that's all it really takes, right? Because it is a lifestyle. And that's why I like the term flexible dieting, because it is. You have the flexibility to be able to shuffle some things around. And this is what's mind-blowing. You talk to some of the set plan people, we'll call them, or the bro split, or sorry, not bro split, but bro dieting people, is that every single frigging diet plan out there is a macronutrient plan. You can break them up, and it will spit out a macronutrient total. So it's just all in the setup of the macronutrient total. So some people, for some reason, want to take out the carbs from sweet potato and put it into, let's say, a banana. Now that, to me, I would call a true, if it fits your macros, if I had to come up with something, is that if one day on your meal plan it said white rice and you said, no, I'd rather have sweet potato, and it measured out pretty much the damn same, I would say, why not, right? Especially if there's no digestion complications, especially if why not? Because that's it. That is giving you the choice. And this is, and I'm going to go a little bit off on the whole mental part of this thing too, is that if you are set in a set plan, and you are eating, it says literally meal one, this many egg whites, this much this, and there's no options or anything, that can make you just go absolutely bananas. But even having the option to have a different carb or a different protein can be extremely liberating. And I've told to my clients to this, I've said, listen, I'm not making you eat anything. You are the one that eats any of this stuff. And that blows their mind. They're like, well, oh, but you told me to eat. So, oh, no. I gave you a plan that you hired me for. I'm not forcing you to eat anything. You could eat anything you want right now, but this is your choice for your goals and for your health. This is the best options. And that has turned the boat around on quite a few people's mindset and mind frames, because that is what it is. No one's forcing that food into your mouth. And that goes, of course, way into emotional eating, psychological eating, stress eating. But it's even so, it's still at that same point, right? So when someone then needs to have, I don't think I could do a show because I won't be able to have my Pop Tarts after a workout. It's like, well, then maybe not think about a show then if you have to have it. Or conversely, there are some people that have done that have been able to have their one Pop Tart a day and go into a show and still crush it. That's cool. I would still like to question to see if they were to change the Pop Tart for something else, what they would look like. But that's one of those debates that you'll have all the time that you'll never hear from. Reminds me of the Dave Pucella, I don't know how to pronounce his name, versus Ian McCarthy. It was a very entertaining debate if anyone wants to go look out and see that. They both kind of won. It was really kind of neat to see. And also, I know that when would you say that if it fits your macros kind of hit its peak in terms of, we'll say everyone was doing it, even pros were trying it or something like that? Would you say like around 14, 15?
Yeah. Yep, I would probably say so. A couple years ago, maybe 3 years top.
Because I remember, I'm not calling out any coaches or calling out any pros at all, but there were some coaches and some pros that were up and coming, and they started to say that they were macro guys or whatever, and then of course they were getting slandered, and some of their clients were looking good, but then at the higher levels there was then water problems, there was inflammation problems, digestion problems, and so now a lot of these coaches have really gone back to kind of more of what I was saying here, which is the no prep with it and everything else, right? Just because it's one of those things is that why leave it in the hands of a dieting hard bodybuilder to type something into MyFitnessPal when he should be focusing on the training, he should be focusing on the sleeping, he should be focusing on winning. Anything else other than, do I have 4 carbs left today, or do I have 8 carbs left today? That shouldn't be on someone's mind.
Yeah, it's so a couple things there that I thought was funny. The the people that say it's like they're clean eaters, they're the diehard clean eaters,
right,
and maybe they start working with me as a client, for example, because this is usually how it kind of unfolds, or maybe I'm helping them. They ask me a question on Facebook, whatever it is. I said, well, what's the macro breakdown of your diet? Like, well, I don't follow macros. I just eat clean foods. I'm like, okay. Do you have any idea what your calorie intake is? No. Okay. And they do this and they have coaches, and they have coaches that are doing this for them. They don't have, maybe the coach knows, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, maybe the coach knows that they have whatever their macro intake is, but I'm willing to bet that they're just taking food away or adding food in, just by like eyeing it.
Oh.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Like,
yeah.
But I've ran into that several times, and obviously that works to an extent. Like, yeah, okay, eat less or eat more,
right?
Duh. But when we're talking about extreme conditioning, or somebody's paying you their hard-earned money for a service like that, that to me seems kind of, I don't know, kind of shady, or just uneducated. But in any case, I always find it funny that they don't. I'm like, you do realize that that protein has 4 calories, those carbs have 4 calories, and that fat has 9 calories. Like, that is a macro plan,
right?
You know what I mean? I'm like, like, well, I only eat rice and and potatoes. I'm like, well, have you ever eaten oats before? Yeah. I'm like, you do, you're a flexible dieter, So it's like, that's always funny. That's always funny to kind of like burst their bubble like that.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the other, as far as like the meal prep thing, I always encourage people to, even if unless they're extremely versed in macro counting and just management, and they don't have any kind of like mental gaps there that would drive them nuts, I always encourage people to plan their meals ahead of time. I'm like, even if you want to insert a Rice Krispie treat in your post-workout meal, that's okay. But I still want you to have your day planned ahead of time. Even if you have the time and the luxury to change your diet every single day, which can kind of become a pain in the ass for the coach. But I still encourage people to, like I said, plan ahead of time, because it's just, they're like, well, I'm coming up to the end of the day and they have some like weird split of macros left. It's like 10 grams of protein, like just some crazy, weird, random mismatch of macros. Like, just plan ahead, know what you're eating. You can prep your meals. It's easier, and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it is. It's too funny. I love the oatmeal story. That's great. Then there's kind of two I would like to bring up. There's a bit of if it fits your macros, you count everything. Obviously, that's the way that it works. There are some protein grams in oatmeal. There are some fat, obviously, in.
Oh, I know where you're going with
chicken.
this.
Yeah, right, for sure. So there is. So I actually, the way that I do my plans, I will give my clients the macronutrient breakdowns, and it's usually for me, so that I know what to sub in and sub out. And I don't, especially off the hop, I really don't like a lot of people doing pure blood, pure bread macroing off the hop, because I want to see where their baseline is with some nutritious food to get them going, depending upon where they're at, and unless it's a client that I know of or anything like that, but the vast majority will do that. And so then they count everything. And so there are so many frigging hybrid foods, is what I call out there, that for some reason either some people will forget to count the other macros, or they think that they don't exist in the macros, or that they think they're ideal. Like, as in, there are some vegetables that have protein in it, and that, again, that there is protein in oats. It's not the ideal sources of protein as well. Like, don't get me started on how protein is apparently a peanut butter is apparently a protein, which no, peanut butter is a fat with protein that is hanging around it. It's up at the nightclub at the door with the fats trying to get in with it. Yes, it has it. Stop eating as a protein source, please. Your fat's going to go way over. But that's it. Just what made me think of that is you saying about they leave it left at night with these really weird ranges. And I've had people ask me, like, I don't know if you've said that, I don't know if I caught that, but they'll ask you, what do I do? And one of the lines, I heard this from Justin Harrison, I use this all the time. I say, I'm a nutritionist, not a chef for that. So if you have to put, you have to put 2/3 of a coconut oil onto a quarter cup of rice with an ounce of chicken, you might have to do that. if you are really macroing that hard, we'll say, because that it's just, it becomes so, I don't want to say silly and insult anybody, but it does become very trying on both coach and client's patience. And I've seen a lot of that mental wear down is what I'm kind of going with that too. I think you mentioned this too, but also during the prep, like you said, it's the feeling full, like why you'd ever want to pick, like, I think you said Snickers bars or something like that as opposed to white potato. Like that's the other one that I really don't quite fully understand there. But yeah, so to go even kind of come back all around and keep talking about why and how you should use it is that it is such a frigging tool that we can have in the toolbox. I don't necessarily think it is its own toolbox of itself, but it's something that you can use if you do have the smarts enough to you. Like, let's say you go to a restaurant and you want to order some food, you can tell, especially at most of the, well, I don't want to say fancier, but anything that's not really a fast food joint, they want your money. So you can go say, hey, I would like about 3-4 ounces of chicken breast, not cooked in oil, with just 2 scoops of white potato with no butter put on it. Now, we have to trust them that they're doing that, obviously. I wouldn't necessarily do this during prep unless you know the people, but that is the way around how you can then put it in your phone or put it in your macro calculator or whatever and kind of go on your way, especially if it's like a impromptu thing from your cousin or whatever and you really do want to stay on your plan and da-da-da-da. So that's where it shines. We're definitely not trying to be super anti-macronutrient dieting, because I still have quite a few clients that do this style of dieting. And it's as long as the education is there behind it too. And so I would say it borderline requires a little bit more work from me on my end, because I will have my clients send me screenshots of their MyFitnessPal and I will add it up for them and I'll say, oh, see, your fiber was there, we need to do this and then that. So it's just a little bit more troubleshooting. But if they do get a hang of it and it's not abused, it can work really frigging well, especially for the people like you're talking about with the better metabolisms or the better digestion. They just have, it seems to be, stomachs of iron and can digest chainsaws, so that they can then feel free to use that, especially if they find that the counting is very liberating for them. Then I say all means go for it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I don't really have a ton to add to this topic. I mean, we pretty much covered food selection, when to use the approach and when you probably shouldn't use the approach and some of the pitfalls. I mean, is there anything that you can think of? Obviously, our disclaimer is always that there are specific situations for people. I mean, beyond what we can talk about on the podcast, that's where individual coaching and stuff comes into play. So, beyond that, I don't have a ton to add, really.
No, that's kind of it. I think it has its uses. I really am not a huge fan of it during the dying hours and weeks of contest prep for obvious reasons. I believe it actually did. Its best thing was got a lot of people into attempting to try to follow a meal plan, which that's awesome. That was probably its strongest thing, is that all these people that would not, could not, will never give up their somewhat foods, people said, yeah, you can still have that. You just have to work it in. And that was still by far, I can shake the hand of the macro people and say, yep, this is, you did it right. Like, that is so cool that you could have potentially brought on a whole bunch of new people to at least start to pay attention to how much food they're having today. Because even the average Joe and the average Jane to walk around and grab a phone, put on MyFitnessPal or another one of the macronutrient calculating apps, and to type in what they eat in a day would blow their minds. So that was what became kind of cool. And then everyone, oh my gosh, maybe I should wake up and do a little bit better there, so that they could see, maybe they went to one of these macro calculators that was free and it said they need this amount of grams of protein and they were eating a quarter of that amount of protein. So it's made being able to find an okay, or at least a starting point for nutrition for cheaper, a heck of a lot easier. However, one of the more famous things I like to say, because I'm clearly famous, Austin, I hope you know this by now. One of the more famous things I like to say by now is that you can Google a meal plan, but you can't Google a coach. And so that's kind of the thing, is that you can definitely find out where to get started out. I think that's the best things about it. And just the negatives would be the absolute abuse, is that how people are using it, leveraging for marketing, how they're saying it's superior to, we'll say, regular dieting, which I haven't seen proper micronutrient infused Pop Tarts yet. Who knows? Maybe we'll see omega-3 Pop Tarts here sometime in the near future. But it has its place. This is going to be like one of the topics that's now in there. And I'm glad we're talking about it now and not the 3 or 4 years ago, 2, 3, 4 years ago, when it was such the hot topic. Is that if you mentioned it, you'd have people like cracking their knuckles, getting ready to sit out in a nighttime worth of flaming over who's right and who's wrong. And then again, like we talked about, all diets are macronutrient diets. They just might not know what they are. And it's just, it's so usable and so flexible that you can do that. And the best way, like we said, was if you want to sub out oatmeal for rice, or want to sub out steak for chicken, or potentially shuffle your fats, or be social for once in your life. Just kidding. I should be telling this to myself. Be more social for once in your life is going out and then knowing that you can eat out at a restaurant. Just you can do better than guessing, right? You can, know what your foods are, know how much you got left for the day. You could save up for the food during the day so you don't go over a total caloric limit or whatever. So there are pros and cons to it too. And one of those things to do would be hire someone that is pretty proficient in macros. I know Austin is, I know myself is, and we can teach you a couple things about that, as opposed to just kind of going blindly and knowing when to adjust things. Which macro should you adjust? Did you set your macros up correctly? Did your free calculator do it right based upon your body type? I should say blood type. Don't do the blood type diet. That was a bad joke I said at the end there. Based upon your body type, based upon your work, based upon your lifestyle. Because everything will work, especially if you want to do it in a healthy and, we'll say, structured manner. Yeah.
Yep. I'm totally on board. I like what you said about basically using the flexible approach to rotate within a set of foods that works for you. I mean, that's the bottom line. Rotate. You're welcome to rotate foods, and I say the same thing to my clients. You can eat rice, you can eat potatoes, you can eat rice cakes, you can eat cream of rice, you can do all those things, and you can rotate those pretty much freely. So that's kind of, like you said, that to you and that to me is kind of what flexible dieting is.
Mm-hmm. That's right. You got it.
So,
all right, everyone. Yeah, right, everyone. Thanks for listening to our super fancy podcast on If It Fits Your Macros, IIFYM. And from Marty and Austin, we will see you next time.
See you guys.